Central Pennsylvania. And for once, my guest is not somewhere else around the world. My guest is not in New Zealand, not in the United Kingdom, not in South Africa, but right here in Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, today my guest is the candidate for the 5th Congressional District. Sorry about that. Something just started there on me. My stream started and it played a Trump ad. How apropos to play a Trump ad. But that was pretty good. Let me skip that really quickly here. But my guest is the congressional candidate for Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District to the U.S. Congress. This is Dasha Pruett. She is a Russian immigrant, naturalized U.S. citizen, and her first time running for political office. So with that, Dasha, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. And I lived in UK for a while, so one of my favorite places.
Yeah, of course, a lot of my audience is in South Africa, and they're intensely curious about South African politics. And actually, you know, you're my first congressional candidate to get on. I have a few others lined up, so it's kind of good because I don't know if you probably won't mind if I put this hat on. I don't think it'll disturb you. It won't trigger you, will it? If I put this hat
on? No, that's awesome. Yes, we have to keep America great.
Yeah. So you're a pretty serious Trump supporter, are you not?
I am. You know, I think. People ask me, it's an interesting question because people ask me, do you support the president? First of all, I would think it would be un-American not to support a president. If you hold a political office, particularly, you might not agree with them, but it's your job. You're elected to work with the leader of the country so you can get things done. Unfortunately, that's not how it's been the last 3 years because there's a lot of people who are triggered. I love that he is a businessman and he's running the country as a business, not as a career politician who, okay, I'm going to run and then I'm going to get elected and then I'm going to run again. And then when I'm done with that job, I'm going to go to something else and I'm going to get elected at that. He's running it as a business. His job is to succeed and make this country, you know, make it great again, I guess. We live in the most amazing country in the world. Being a Russian immigrant, coming out of communism, socialism, living in Italy, living in Austria, living in UK, I still think this is the greatest country in the world. This is one of the few countries where you can come from nothing, get to everything, you can lose it, and then you can start from scratch and get yourself back up again. This is one of the few countries where we have that kind of an opportunity. And you know, it's a shame to watch what is happening right now. It's actually not a shame, it's absolutely disturbing, particularly when you see what's going on in Portland, what's going on in Chicago, and now it's in Kentucky. It's just this attack on our nation is absolutely horrifying. So, you know, that he is fighting for our country, that he's fighting to bring the jobs back, that he's fighting for that forgotten man, you know, the people in the industries, in the industrial type of work, the coal miner, the lumber, the sheet metal workers, the car manufacturers, that he's bringing all of those back, I think is absolutely amazing. And he listens. Everybody who I know who has met him say, he listens to you. He's actually, even though he seems a little crazy on television and passionate, but when he's one-on-one, he's actually very calm and he has a conversation and he looks like he listens, he cares, and he does something about it. So I don't know what you can't not like about that. I mean, I wish he would tweet a little less and
take a number.
Right. And I know some people think that the way he talks is very unprofessional or not
crass.
Right. Not political. But if you think about it, he grew up with the everyday Joe in the building industry. He talks like them and that's who he is trying to reach. He's not going to use colorful legal lingo because if you think about it, a lot of our politicians are, a lot of them are attorneys. So they like to create everything very confusing and use the language that you have you have to read 6 times to even understand what that sentence means, and then get an interpreter to make sure that you understand what it means. He doesn't do that. So, yes, I do support the president, and I will be working with the president to make sure that we get our country back and to fight for our American dream.
It's interesting, Dasha. Let me just digress a second there. You started off talking about this, and you said that that this is a land of second chances. Last night, Vice President Mike Pence spoke at the convention. I did a stream earlier today in which I listened to his speech and then I commented on it. And one of the things I pointed out was that he didn't come out and say it, but really he was making the case that this is a land of second chances. 2 things about Trump in particular. Number one position I didn't agree with fully, but the other I fully agree with. His focus, his laser focus on opioid addiction and saving families and redemption of families. That's a second chance thing about. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I was less in agreement with, is his intense desire for criminal justice reform. I appreciate the interest and I understand the utility of it. I wasn't completely on board with it as a conservative, but I understand it. But I would say that Trump, more than any president in recent history, has been focused on second chances. And let me just go a little bit further. And that's the story of America. Like you said, you can come here, you can make it rich, you can go bust, you can come back, and nothing's held against you. And it's not just you. Unlike in other countries, like in Europe and other parts of the world, we don't suffer the sins of our parents and our grandparents. Just because your father was a louse doesn't mean you're going to be a louse. Just because your mother was a troublemaker doesn't mean you're going to be a troublemaker. That's very different than where you grew up, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, in Russia, under communism particularly, they would exile an entire family. So if your father did something, my father was sent to Siberia twice because communist government and the KGB did not appreciate his artwork. Granted, there is no free speech. So Lenin in the dress did not go over very well with the KGBers. So yes, he got sent to Siberia for that.
I bet he kind of saw that one coming.
Well, he was a part of this. There was a very large underground artistic movement. Solzhenitsyn was kind of a part of that, even though he was on the earlier part.
Yes.
But there's a huge artistic movement, and my father was a part of it. And I grew up in that, and I remember them getting together, under the dark sky in somebody's apartment, and they would write poetry, paint, they would sing, and it was very bohemian, but they stuck together. And the whole message was fighting communism. And how do you go against the government that if you get caught, they either exile you, execute you, jail you, or put you in a mental institution. And then as a child, luckily my parents were very protective and I didn't have the same fate. But if you're a child that gets in that family, they can exile the child as well. There's going to be punishment in school. There's a lot of other things that go on. So yes, here we don't have that. It's you don't pay for the sins of your father or your mother. You can achieve anything. And some of the greatest stories are from the children whose parents, had a criminal past or were very down, and they fought against it and created something amazing out of that struggle.
Well, not to spend a whole lot of time on communism because it's such a downer, but but I think it's actually important to talk about because we have all these. Normally I just call them fools, but I guess I don't want to say uninformed because they certainly seem to be somewhat informed. But all these people running around, especially younger people, but not just younger people. We got people like Bernie Sanders who are avowed socialists, or at least they claim to be, and they believe in socialism and communism. It strikes me as quite odd. I remember very clearly 2 books that influenced me heavily as a young kid were both fiction, and as a young adult, I should say. One was by Vladimir Voinovich, an emigre Soviet writer who came out of that time frame like your father and migrated to Germany. He wrote a book called Moscow 2042, which was amazing. It was about someone being transported to Moscow in the future and all the absurdities of Soviet life. And another was The Life and Times of Private Ivan Chomkin, which was just a fantastic book about a Soviet soldier who captures a German pilot who crashes. and he becomes a hero of the Soviet Union. Then he's turned into a traitor of the Soviet Union because all the apparatchiks above him use him, and he doesn't do anything. But suddenly he goes from being a hero to being the goat. It just shows all the complexity. So let me just, before we go too much further on this Russian thing and the Soviet Russia and communism thing. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, you're sitting here in America. You've come from a place where you dealt with this. I've seen Venezuelans who escaped from Venezuela, a million Iranians who fled Iran, who came to the United States. All of them look back and go, this is insane. I mean, what are your thoughts of all these people running around America going, oh, socialism, democratic socialism. We need state control of industry.
You know what? The way I try to, I've been talking about socialism for the last 3 years, just when I start seeing that AOC movement and Bernie kind of coming out of the woodwork. And so even before even thinking about running for office, but this is actually what got me to run for office, is explaining to people what real communism, socialism looks like. And people tend to say to me, well, you grew up in communism. They're forgetting that it was USSR, which is United Soviet Socialist Republic. So when I talk about that when toilet paper becomes a luxury item, and ironically enough, you have to use the propaganda newspaper, which I find it kind of funny, but it's, you don't have toilet paper. My husband's favorite story is about the brown banana. The first time I had a banana, I was 9 years old, and my grandmother and I stood, it was being sold from the back of the truck. We didn't know what we're standing in line for. And we stood in that line for 3 hours. We got 2 bananas because there were rations per household. We didn't even know what a banana was. It was like, what is this exotic thing? And until I came to Italy, because we lived in Italy for a while during the immigration transition, I didn't realize the bananas were actually yellow. It was this brown banana. To this day, if there's a little brown on the banana, I refuse to eat it. My husband will tell you, I'd rather eat them green. But it's, that's communism, socialism. Everything is rationed. Government, whenever government gets involved in anything, they break it. Think about that. And what ends up happening, we are going to become slaves to the government. It's going to be the Bernie supporters who are going to have their 4 houses and not going to feel the struggle. But the average person is going to pay 90% in taxes. You're not going to be able to choose the job that you want, because in school, by the time you hit 10th grade or even 8th grade, they're going to make you test out of school. So if you are not smart enough, you're going to go work, out of 8th grade, you're going to go and work in factory. They're not even going to invest the money into you. If you are smart enough and you're good in science, they're going to tell you whether you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be work in a pharmacy or whatever you're going to do. There's no rights for anything. You have no say in absolutely anything that involves your life. Yes, daycare was free, but I started daycare at 6 months old. And that was not an option not to have your child in daycare. And I actually was in daycare for 7 days of the week, like 5 days in the week, and just go home on weekends. So I had somebody else taking care of me, not my mother, because my mother worked 3 jobs and she was going to medical school. And she had to. It wasn't an option. She had to. And my grandmother worked. She was in her 60s and she still had to work because it was not an option. So when people talk about this free, sounds awesome, but it doesn't work that way. And if you think about it, in America, we already been kind of deprogrammed into thinking that free is awesome. You get free samples, you get buy one, get one free, you get gift with purchase. Nobody's thinking that somebody's paying for that free sample. The store is picking up for that free sample. The gift with purchase is the manufacturer is actually spending additional money on that. It's part of their program to get more buyers, but it's not free. Somebody's paying for it. So we're going to be paying the free stuff. We're going to be paying for it. Free medicine, and I'm sure you can admit to that too, living in UK. They had free medicine. When I lived there, luckily I had privatized medicine. I had insurance. I tell the story. My son burst an eardrum. He had horrible allergies. I had an appointment within 5 minutes. Luckily, the doctor was around the corner so I could get there in time. My girlfriend's mother got diagnosed with cancer. She had national health care. She did not have a next appointment till 6 months after the diagnosis, just to create a care plan, like what the treatment plan. That's free. When we were in Russia, I didn't know about diabetes. I didn't know that cancer was curable. Whatever you got diagnosed with, you died from it because they did not treat it because A, they did not have the money, and two, why are they going to invest in you with that? You're going to die anyway. So why are they going to put that money in? So that's what free medicine looks like.
Well,
and people don't realize.
There's also an evil side to it as well, and it's not necessarily the free medicine, but it's the authoritarianism and the state knowing better than you and making decisions for you. Hendo, who's one of my moderators, is based in the UK. He's a South African who fled South Africa, I believe, but moved to the UK. But Hendo's there, and he says the national health system is not good anymore. I don't know if it was ever good would be my argument, but let me give you a case here, Dasha, real quick, just to make an example for folks. So a couple of years ago, there's a case of the family who had a small child. The child had cancer, a rare form of cancer, and the national health system refused to do anything, experimental treatments. So of their own volition, they found a program in the Czech Republic with experimental treatments for this type of cancer. And they took their child there. The government told them that the child gets no care, go to hospice, just die. They took their child there. When they came back, they were arrested as felons and charged with child endangerment and some other charges in the UK. And then they took their child from them. Eventually, I think he died after that. But that's just insane. Can you imagine that? I mean, that sounds like the Soviet Union, where people make decisions for you and you have no say in your life or your children's lives. It's crazy.
Well, there was another case, if you remember. There was a child who ended up dying. The parents were fighting to keep him alive. And the government decided that his life was not worth it. Yep. And he ended up dying. I mean, that's that's what government overreach looks like. I mean, we're dealing with this now with this whole COVID pandemic, where small businesses are going out of business every single day because the governors are saying, no, you're not essential worker, whatever that means. You can't be open. Right now in New York, the mayor, de Blasio, said restaurants are not going to be open until 2021. He completely managed to break New York, one of the most amazing cities where every tourist ran to, not only walked, ran to. Now the museums are closed. There's no more Broadway. There's no restaurants. It's a ghost town. The taxes are ridiculous. And people are running. They are running. They're not walking out of there. They can't pack their trucks fast enough to get out. Yeah. So that's what government looks like. When government starts taking over all of your decisions.
No, and something you touched on there is this nonsense about declaring what's an essential business or service. I mean, in many of these localities, like, I won't speak for Pennsylvania, but for other states, the governors and, not legislatures, because legislatures aren't involved, but the governors have determined, or mayors have determined, that essential services include things like weed dispensaries for marijuana purchases, not for medicinal purposes, but for recreational purposes, and abortion clinics are essential services. So we can terminate the life of an American who hasn't been born yet. Yet we are forced to shut down businesses where people can get their cars repaired, to purchase necessary items. I couldn't go to Best Buy to replace a broken laptop. I have to go to Amazon and make Amazon wealthy rather than going to my local Best Buy. It's just absolutely insane. But let me shift a second here, Dasha. So you mentioned small businesses, and I've watched this here in York County as Governor Tom Wolf crushed our business in Pennsylvania and threatened. Do you remember his comment? He called county officials, municipal officials, mostly Republicans and conservatives, but not entirely, but mostly, called them and business owners cowards in the face of an unseen enemy. This man, who never served 5 seconds in uniform and doesn't know what he's talking about, tries to equate a virus with a war and those who oppose his capricious governance as being cowards. I found that very vile and disturbing. I don't know. Did you catch that comment?
Yes. I mean, he's made a lot of comments about different things. I was saying to you, my husband is in a wedding photography business. We had absolutely every single wedding for 2020 canceled because nobody knows what they can and cannot do. If somebody is brave enough to want to continue to have the wedding, the family member saying, we're not coming. So it seems to me that everything that gave us joy in our life, birthday parties, graduations, proms, weddings. My son just got married 2 months ago via Zoom. Nobody was there. He had 5 friends. He's in Colorado. I feel like I was robbed of that experience, of that rite of passage, for me. This is my firstborn. So anything that's good, we can't go to church, but yes, you can protest and riot. I think we should start calling it protests. I am protesting atheism. I am protesting, not being married, whatever. We can get creative here, but he is making decisions on things that free thinking people are supposed to be doing. And if you think about it, they are ripping away and tearing away our Constitution. So the First Amendment right is gone. So everything about that, assembly, religion, free speech, unless you call it a riot, is gone. There's so many things now. They're going after our amendment to vote, because this voting in by mail, where people don't want to do that. If you want to keep it as an option, keep it as an option. Don't make it mandatory. And that's the problem that we're having. It's government slowly already reaching into everything. People are not aware about the Second Amendment. The House is slowly passing the red flag laws, where it's going to be disgruntled neighbor or your ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever hates your guts, is going to come and report that you have weapons in your house, and somebody's going to come in and they're going to take them away. With police, this defunding the police, which in Delaware County, we're already starting to see this. They already trying to get rid of our canine unit. They just got rid of one of our trucks that was donated, that just saved a couple of weeks ago, saved 21 people out of floods. But now it's because it looks too militarized, they're going to take that away as well. So we're facing this stuff. In Russia, we did not have police. We had militia. We had KGB. And this is what we're doing here. Report your neighbor if they're not wearing a mask or not social distancing. Report a business who's trying to stay open. We're going to be reporting on everybody. And I feel like I'm living back in communist Russia, and it terrifies me. It absolutely terrifies me. And if people don't understand the importance of voting in this election, if by December, I think it's 20th, we don't have the president, we don't know who the president is, Nancy Pelosi takes over. Chew on that. Can you imagine her being the president of our country in the direction that she's going to take us?
I can't imagine Nancy Pelosi doing anything but retiring. That's the only thing I look forward to. But it's interesting because snitches get stitches. But there's this turning citizens into spies for the government. They worry about people watching our phones or reading our emails. They're convincing Americans to be actors for the state. And it's really pathetic. You see the people harassing. I saw the video out there in Manhattan Beach in California where these 2 guys were sitting on a park bench. They're facing away from the city. There's no one on the street. And they're drinking a cup of coffee. They're about 8 feet apart, and they're not wearing masks because they're drinking coffee. And these 2, as they say, Karens, Karens, as they say in South Africa, they pronounce it that way. But come along. I've decided not to call them Karens anymore. I call them Biancas now. These hysterical people. But they come along and they start asking, "Why aren't you wearing masks?" They weren't even talking to these people, and they said, "Well, because we're out here. We're not wearing masks. We're drinking coffee." And they just start an argument with them, and then eventually the young girl throws hot coffee on one of the guys and starts an altercation. I saw something yesterday in which this black woman comes up and berates a couple sitting in a restaurant who have their mask off, their table 6 feet away from the next guest. This person comes over without a mask and screams at them with the most vile profanity. This is happening all over the place. The German Stasi perfected this system with, out of 16 million residents in the German Democratic Republic, the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, over 1 million were spies diming on their neighbors. It's really scary. I mean, the way that people behave, this hysteria, and it's mostly unwarranted. Well, it's all unwarranted, but it's mostly driven by no science. It's funny how the left always calls conservatives science deniers, yet they deny science about when life begins. They deny science about gender. They deny science about this virus when it suits their needs. It's just crazy, isn't it?
And in Russia, we had the same thing during the revolution, the 1916 revolution. They did the same thing. They encouraged children to report their parents. And the children watched as their parents were being hung in the public square, and the children were put on the pedestal and they were made heroes. Yeah. Now, and I mean, this is where we're heading anymore. And it's what I'm confused about, at what point does it end? When will people start rising up and saying, I'm done. I can't. I grew up in freedom and I want freedom. I don't want free stuff. I want freedom. And freedom, you know, the right to speak, the right to educate my children the way I want. You know, I don't want them to be propaganda brainwashed. You know, one of the best books I encourage people to read, it's called The Giver. My kids read it in 6th grade. It will take you 2 hours. It's very similar to where we're heading. And 1984, same thing. And people are saying, well, that's totally different. You don't understand. This is democratic socialism, whatever that means. There's nothing democratic about it.
Yeah. Well, see, what people don't realize, and Dasha, I'm sure you realize this because you're running for Congress, is we have a unique system here. And people talk about democracy, but democracy is often the tyranny of the majority. And you also can have the tyranny of the minority. That can happen too. But the tyranny of the majority is far more common. And so what we have is a unique system in which initially states, it was a union of states, not of peoples. We weren't a union of Carolinians and Virginians and Pennsylvanians. We were a union of states, and the states had primacy. Hence the reason the senior body of the legislature, which is not the one you're running for, the Senate, has primacy over the House of Representatives. It's the branch of the legislature that has checks and balances on the court, appointments, and treaty signing, and on the executive. So that's one measure. And also the Electoral College was the other measure so that states had primacy. And then the third key thing in the Constitution was initially, until around 1912, all of our senators were selected by the state legislatures, and now they're by popular vote because of constitutional amendment. But that made the state the primary actor, not the individual, and not this tyranny of the majority. That was a system that prevented the tyranny of the majority. And I don't think a lot of people realize that outside the United States, and I think it's a very unique part of our representative democracy that makes us strong.
Well, the problem is we stopped teaching history in general. We only teach what is convenient. I have had people tell me that Holocaust never happened. You know, a lot of different things. They're saying it's just, you're making this up. You know, we have to start, frankly, with our schools being shut down, in a way, it's a blessing because parents can start seeing what their children are being taught or not taught. And there's some school districts, I found this kind of funny and ironic, are having parents sign off that they're not going to sit in on the classes, on these Zoom classes. So what exactly are they hiding? Why wouldn't you want the parent to participate in their children's education? What are you afraid of? So a lot of parents are finding ulterior things in education. They're creating smaller pods of like-minded people who they take turns or they hire a tutor or somebody. So it's, in a way, that everything that's happening right now, I feel like this is our own revolution. I think we're going through our own civil war. And the pandemic kind of started it, but I think a lot of people, their eyes are opening. And I cannot tell you how many people I have who have been people of color in not the best neighborhoods, who said to me, I've been a Democrat my entire life. How do I switch parties? Because at this point, my eyes are opening and I am realizing that this is now no longer working and I need to fight back and I need to figure out how to take, charge of what is going on.
Well, actually, there's a lot of things to unpack here in our time coming up, Dasha. But you just talked about people of color. I don't want to talk about that in some of the part of your district because I know your district. I've spent a lot of time there. Not all of your district that well, but I know parts of it. And also, I want to talk to you about small businesses. You alluded to your husband, a small business. I want to get back to that and the impact of what's happening with this nonsense. But very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Chris Wine Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. This is Chris live from Central Pennsylvania. And for once, my guest is not from somewhere else around the world, but she's right down the road here in Pennsylvania. It's Dasha Pruett. She is a candidate for Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District to represent Pennsylvania and that district in Congress in Washington, D.C. Dasha is an immigrant to the United States from Russia, from the Soviet Union. She grew up there for the first part of her youth and then came to the States. And she's lived under the yoke of communism and socialism, and she can speak authoritatively to it. We haven't even touched on the keystone topics, which I know a lot of the folks watching in South Africa and here in the U.S. are going to be passionate about, and that's the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. We'll get to that, Dasha. But before we go any further, let me get back to this thing about small businesses, because you mentioned your husband has a business. It's been around for a while, if I'm not mistaken, a family-owned business, and it's been incredibly successful. And now what I would say, this is my view, if you disagree, please let me know, but the capricious, unscientific decisions of bureaucrats and politicians in Harrisburg have destroyed your husband's business potential. Did I miss something?
No, you're completely correct. So my husband's business was started in 1932, right after the Great Depression by his grandfather. And it was a very successful photography business. We did children weddings, events, any kind of portrait photography. And we, like the way I say it, we survived World War II. We survived the Great Depressions. We survived a lot of different things. But with this, I don't know how we can survive because luckily we no longer have studios. We used to be, at one point, we had 7 studios. And several years ago, we took a decision to close for various reasons, just because iPhone completely got rid of it. This is like everybody's new favorite camera. And, people don't do children's portraits, and weddings are getting smaller and smaller because millennials do not want to get married.
Maybe they just don't have any friends.
Or that too. But it's so, but we survived so many great things. But now, and what people don't understand, it's not like what gets involved with a wedding, right? You have one event. So you have a catering hall, you have a caterer, you have somebody who's providing the food. So you have the stores, the suppliers, including the farmers. Then you have the florists. Then you have the bridal salons, the dressmakers, we can go down as far as we can go. So now all of these people are out of business. And my heart breaks for our friends who have not one catering facility, but 5. Because in this, so far there's only one that started operating, and that's the only, because they could put a tent outside and they could have about under 200 people, I think, outside, social distancing. But in other places, like all the other places in Center City are closed. So a lot of the restaurants in the city are closed. And then you have all these mom and pop stores that got looted during, in July, I think, 2 places that were completely looted. And it's, people just can't recover from that. And I like that one woman's comment, well, they have insurance. Insurance doesn't cover you for a lot of those type of things. You have.
And where does that money come from? It comes out of my pocket paying for premiums.
Exactly. And that's another thing. Like, I'm waiting for insurance companies to start going out because I don't know how many claims they can cover. So it's just, we are in a world of hurt right now, just going through this. And again, having this overreach on on what's going on. I met this amazing woman last Friday, Kristen, from South Dakota, I think, who refused to close down. And we had a conversation about this. She refused to close down. She said, I met with my constitutional attorneys. I met with virologists and epidemiologists. I met with everybody. And within 54 days, I had over close to 70 town halls and conferences. And she said, I told everybody, you're free people. You have to make the decisions on your life. If you feel like you need to close your business, close it. If you feel like you need to wear a mask, wear it. She let it to the people to make the decisions, and they have the smallest numbers of cases. So figure that.
You're talking about Kristi Noem, the governor of out there. Yes.
Yes. I mean, she's fantastic. And that's how it's supposed to be. We are a free society. And if you look under the human rights bill, if you go under UN, it's also like they have their own constitution, their 10 commandments in a way. So far, every single right has been taken away.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which the United States is a party.
Yes.
And yes, all those things disappeared. And it's not just here, it's around the world. Actually, we've suffered in this country under this lunacy, here in Pennsylvania especially, but also especially in places like Seattle and Portland, people are suffering, and New York, which is just insane, New York City especially. But we have it much better than people in South Africa. They absolutely have suffered in Zimbabwe. They're locked in Zimbabwe. They have a curfew 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now, unless you have a paying job. If you don't have a paying job, you're arrested on the spot for being on the street. It's absolutely insane. And South Africa's had their dark days where they banned tobacco sales, they banned alcohol, and they had no justification for the tobacco. Let me adjust here on another thing. I'm going to just bring in a little bit of the chat because people are watching and having some good comments in the chat. I want to make sure I didn't miss these. So let me get back here. There was a question. I'm going to get to Proudly Neanderthal's question, which was a few minutes ago. But people were shouting out love and saying lots of love from South Africa and other places. And
Thank you.
And they're loving the fact that they're getting to hear from someone who lived under Soviet communism. They just astounded by that. Yep, there are still people around who did, and they're not all in Russia.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a few jokes here too. Jaco Myberg said public schools are all about sex ed and twerking. That's not too far from it's not too far from the truth in some school districts, I would say.
Yes.
Yes, and Erica sends her love from South Africa. Shirley Creed says it's brilliant. Lots of great comments here, but I did want to go back to something that I mentioned that was. Let me get back here just a second. It was at 12:51, I think it was. Proudly Neanderthal. That's the call sign here. Said, why is there a 50-50 split in U.S. politics? Almost seems finely tuned by design. What would it take to swing either way? Well, first off, before you jump into this, let me add a little bit of background to this. That's a misleading thing. When people say the U.S. is split 50-50, when you look at those who are registered for political parties, about 35% of the registered electorate is Democratic, registered Democratic Party, and about 30% registered Republican. So that's 65% of the people who take the time to register to vote, not those who vote, but those who are registered to vote, that affiliate with one party or the other. So that leaves 35% that aren't affiliated with a party, and they are the independents, and they'll vote whichever way the wind swings. In 2008, they voted overwhelmingly for Barack Obama, and that's why he went there. In 2016, they voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, and that's where a swing is. So you've got to find the independent vote. But Dasha, in your district, and I looked up the numbers here, there are 506,518 registered voters that were able to vote. Now, in Pennsylvania, we should mention that you have to be registered in a political party to vote in the primary, which for me was the first time since 1988, because as an officer, I never registered a political party. But I voted as a Republican this year for Donald Trump, by the way. In our tardy primary, our primary came in May instead of earlier, what was supposed to. But in your district, there's 506,518 registered voters. Of that, 272,112 are registered as Democrats. 170,818. So that's about 52,000, or no, excuse me, 102,000 more Democrats than registered Republicans in your district. And there's 64,000 who are not registered in either party. So that's quite a big swing. So that kind of disputes the narrative that the question that Proudly Neanderthal was asking about a 50-50 split. In your district, you're kind of swimming against the tide when it comes to those who are registered. But again, registered doesn't mean people who rock up to vote. So in your district, right. What do you think? How are your chances against? Is it Mary Gay Scanlon? Is that her name? I think is your opponent. Yeah.
I think they're fantastic. First of all, our voter registrations are up and up. And like I said, I have people coming to me and asking how to switch parties. So we re-registering those voters as well. The other thing is the way I explain it, and what a noble concept is. I will be representing everybody. It's not about the party. My party is just what I'm a Republican just because I'm registered Republican. I will be representing everybody, and everybody's issues, frankly, are the same. Despite of the party, we want basic things. We want food on the table. We want a roof over our heads. We want a job. We want good education for our children. We want safety and securities in our communities. And most people want unity, except for the bunch of wackadoos that are running around burning their cities and shooting everybody up, who are completely destroying that. But most people want the same thing. And what our politicians forgot is that it's not about the party, it's about the people. And it's about being United States of America, not the divided states of America, which they have been creating for, I don't know for how long. And the thing is, most Democrats are the JFK Democrats. What they're seeing right now is not what they believe. They don't want that. They want, like I said, simple things. And the reason Democrats like Donald Trump is because he is fighting for their jobs. He's bringing their jobs back into the communities. Like, we have the Marcus Hook pipeline here, which is like a huge project. That's an enormous amount. That's thousands of jobs, and our politicians outside of their communities, they do not go out and talk to anybody. They get elected and they think that they are in there forever. That's why I believe in term limits. We got to get them out. If you're a fossil who's been there for 50 years, you need to go.
Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly, Joe Biden. Because you can't relate to the everyday person, because those things have changed over the last 50 years. Our issues from 50 years ago are no longer the same as they are today. And what I wanted to do is to have town halls, quarterly town halls, invite the people who are the committee chairs, who represent their people and their communities, whether they're Democrat or Republican, sit down and say, what is going on in your community? What do you need help with? What can I take to DC and what can I fight to get to you? Because I am working for you, not vice versa. It's not about an election. I've never been a politician, thank God. I've never been bought by anybody or owe anybody any favors. I'm not an attorney, never played one on TV. I still have a soul. And I'm just an average, regular person who's going through the same nonsense that is dictated by the people who are supposed to represent us in office, and they stopped. All they care about is impeachment, Ukraine. Let's see, what else did we have back then? Nothing gets done. I need somebody to reach out to me, and I've reached out to them and yet to hear anything from them. How can we fix this? How long are we going to keep this country shut down? At what point are we going to reopen and going to give power back to the people to live their lives? Or is the government going to tell me when and how I should tie my shoes? Because this is where we're heading. So I think we have a great chance to win. People are not what the government officials are now not seeing, and are including GOPs and Democrat Party, they're not seeing the underground grass movement that is going on. Like the woman in Baltimore who's never ran for politics.
Kim
stunning.
That's Kim Klacik.
Yes, in Pennsylvania, we have Kathy Barnett, who's running for fourth, never ran for politics. We have John Emmons in sixth. He never ran for politics. He's a scientist. So the average person is sick and tired of watching this nonsense, this bickering, nothing getting accomplished. They want things done. They want people who are passionate, who care, and who are committed to working for their people. So that's how I think, and we're out there. I make sure I'm in every community and I talk to every everyday person and say to them, how can I help you? What are the issues that you are seeing? What do you need? And that's what we have to do. We have to start changing this whole, these rhinos and the dinos that are sitting, have been sitting there forever.
Let me get to something you talked about there in just a moment. Before we get, I want to answer a question here in the comments, and then if you want to add to that, you can. But I want to get back to parts of your district, like down around Chester. There's some historically black neighborhoods that are long suffering, and so you mentioned me talking to people of color. Let me get back to that in a minute. But before we get to that, there was a comment over here by Sasa Markovich, and Sasa said that, but if you need to register as a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, it's not about people, but it's about elections and political affiliation. Let me clarify. You don't have to register as a party member to vote in America. You do have to register in many states as a member of, not all, but as a member of a political party in order to vote in the primary. And the reason for that is that the primary doesn't count. Let me explain what I mean by that. The primary is not electing people to office in America. Now, the press and the media may hoodwink you into thinking, ooh, look, Alexandria Cortez has won. Yeah, she won a beauty contest, as all candidates do. I mean, I don't mean to be diminished that. Technically, you won the beauty contest, the Republican primary. You defeat your opponent there. So I don't mean to say that in a malicious way, but you've won your party's position on the ballot is what you've won. So the people in that party get to decide who their candidate is. In Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's case, the people of that district in New York decided that she's going to represent the Democratic Party. They voted for her over someone else. And in your case, you defeated a Republican challenger, and you've won the party's nomination. So your name goes on the ballot for that party. But I could run in your district. I just have to get enough people to sign a petition. I forget how many. It depends on the office how many. And it'd be
1,000.
It's 1,000.
It's 1,000.
Yeah. So there you go. So I could run against Dasha as an independent, not a party member. The point here is that you don't have to be in a party to vote in the general election. It's just the primaries are for the parties. That's why there's different rules for the Republican convention, for the Democratic convention. The Democrats have these super delegate nonsense, which are senior party officials who distort the outcome of who gets selected, like we saw with Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in 2016. The Republicans, it's straight first past the post. You get the majority of the votes then in the states, then you get it. So anyway, I don't know if you want to comment on that. You don't have to, Dasha, but you're welcome to.
Right. So yes, you're right. We have to kind of choose a party, but it doesn't mean that I've been a Republican since I turned 18 years old. I could not, being an immigrant and coming from communist country, we immigrated. I was 10 years old, and I became a citizen when I was 16. I was very proud and very emotional. Watching it. These people getting, naturalized was like a tearjerker for me.
I was choked up too, and I'm native born.
But so I registered as a Republican on my 18th birthday. Right on my birthday, I could not wait, because to me, and the reason I registered as a Republican is because to me at that time, Democrat was for the working people. And being in Russia, working people kind of looked a little different. So I think Republicans seemed to me more like a capitalism system. It was more opportunity that you can build a business, you can be anything. So that's how I looked at it. And I voted for a couple of Democrats in my life, because I never vote straight ballot, and I never vote just because somebody's a Republican, or I look at people, what they promise, they're just everything about them, their policy, and that's how I vote for them. And I think a lot of the people, particularly in Pennsylvania now, we will not be able to vote straight ballot. Straight ballot means you push one button, and then all the candidates who are like Republican or Democrat, just one button. Now you have to actually go and pick your candidate who you're voting for, which is a plus for us, because there's some people who are not support of our president, but yet they believe in my message and they like who I am. So they will vote for me, even though they might vote for the other Democratic nominees. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I don't know what else to add.
No, that's fine. It was a good question and comment from they actually the response in the chat was thanks for the explanation. It makes sense. So let's shift a little bit here and your constituency. So I've been down to Chester, which falls into your district, and that's where that big bridge is that goes over into New Jersey. And there's a soccer stadium down there where the Philadelphia Union used to play at, and I've been there for rugby competitions. But as you drive up from Delaware into that section of South Philly, there are some really sad, depressing neighborhoods around there, and they're almost entirely Black African American neighborhoods. That's part of your district. Have you had a chance to get out and meet people there? And are those some of the people that said, "Hey, how do I vote for the Republicans because I'm done with the other side"?
So what we're doing, because everything is so upside down with this election, you can't do things like you normally do. So what we're doing is we're doing little meet and greets. We ask people to have something. So I have a couple of people, summer stuff too, because a lot of people are either away and there's a lot of nonsense going on. So we have little meet and greets. We are going out. I have a couple of people in Upper Darby, Chester, Sharon Hill, in those areas who want to do some get-togethers. So I can get, and some churches too. That was another problem. A lot of the churches are closed. Yeah. So there's only a couple that are open, normal. And so the goal is to get in front of them and to talk with them. So my car does drive in that direction. I do, I think it's important to reach to those people because they do feel like the forgotten voter. They feel like they don't matter. And during the primary, my husband and I, we actually started with it's called the Lower Delco, with those impoverished communities. We started actually going there first and meeting with people and talking with people. And I think I have more lawn signs. We have about 1,000 lawn signs in our area. I can't order them fast enough. So Lower Delco has a lot of my signs, and it's kind of, I find it even funny and ironic because people contact and say, how can I get your sign? I saw it and I would love to have one on my lawn. And then we put door hangers out. We will be knocking on doors and canvassing and talking to people. I mean, that's the important thing. People will not vote for you regardless of your party. Some might, but people will vote for you because you reached out and you actually showed concern. And one of the other things we're planning to do is a community outreach where we can either do like a cleanup for a park or a playground and then do like a barbecue, ice cream type of thing. So for the kids. So we are planning all of that. It's just, it's a little tough because summer is a little strange too.
Well, I have to say, Dasha, a lot. Hats off to you and even to your opponent. This has got to be the strangest, most bizarre time to run as a political candidate. I'm glad I didn't toss my hat in the ring in this election cycle because, I mean, like you talked about, I mean, a lot of people get votes because of community organizations, pastors and rabbis and imams talking to their members of the congregation, advising them, telling them you should vote for this person. Historically, especially in the Black community, that's been a big driver of votes is pastors telling them. So you can't go to churches to drum up votes. You can't hold rallies because of public limitations on gatherings, unless you've got like Mike Bloomberg money to burn as if it was made of paper. It's pretty tough. I mean, this must be a heck of a challenging. What's been the most difficult part of this for you in this campaign season?
Raising money, believe it or not, raising money, because when people are unemployed and have been unemployed for over 6 months at this point, honestly, I feel like a jerk when I ask for money. Like but what we do is if I get $5, I'm like gung ho about it because I know that these people believe in me. So any amount is fantastic. But the way I run this too is we're not wasting money on frivolous garbage, which the government officials love to do. So I'm not renting out spaces everywhere. We have offices that are already paid by the government. Why use those? I use door knockers, and we have about 150 volunteers who are pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, going out, talking to people. So my volunteers are my strongest base, and we keep getting more and more every day, which is amazing, which tells me that people believe in me. And like I said, we have put money into lawn signs. So if I get a $500 donation, it's going into the lawn signs or into literature, postcards. And we did awesome postcards. We do handwritten with a real stamp. So it looks like we care. It's not mass mail. We're actually putting time and effort into this campaign, which I think people are starting to see that we actually care. It's not just an election. It's because we want to do and fight for our community. So, but yeah, raising money and having events. So right now what we're having is people volunteering to do little events in their backyard, 20 people, 25 people. And I tell them it doesn't have to be Republican, invite everybody. I want everybody to hear my message. And that's pretty much how we're running this campaign.
Look, I feel a little guilty, Dasha. I have to be honest here. I think I heard your phone vibrating. I hope I didn't force you to miss a call from Donald Trump. That wasn't.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yes, that would be an awesome endorsement, wouldn't it? So Brett Sessoms, who's in Mississippi and is on the channel quite a bit, asked if there are any Cuban Americans in your communities in your district. I'm not aware of that. Are there any in that part of?
They're very small.
Yeah.
We don't have many Cubans. We have a Puerto Rican community. We have Brazilian, but not too many Cuban. So a lot of Italians and Irish, I have to say.
Oh yeah, and they've been there for a long time. It used to be
and a Caribbean community.
Oh, okay.
I have also up in Yaden and Chester and in those Eddystone, in those areas. There's a very large Caribbean community.
Now, I do need to throw a shout out very quickly to one of our loyal followers here or viewers, and that's the Right Reverend Rawhide is what he goes by. This guy he had a stroke over a week ago, and the same day while he was sitting in the hospital recovering, he was streaming and watching my show. Talk about dedication. He's currently in the hospital right now awaiting a CT scan. So, I mean, that's dedication. Thanks. A little shout out to the Right Reverend Rawhide. So let me, we were talking about mail-in ballots earlier, and I was greatly concerned. I went to a meeting with the local state representative here, Dawn Kiefer, earlier in the year before the hysteria, COVID, before that started. And I sat down, run away. I sat down and listened about mail-in balloting here in Pennsylvania. I'm like, whoa, stop right there. I got a problem. Now, people are like, well, not that meeting, but other people are like, what are you talking about? You've been voting by mail for 30 years. Yes, federal absentee ballot is done by mail. That's the mechanism, but it's not a mail-in ballot. The mail-in ballot, United States are just sending them out to people willy-nilly. People aren't requesting them, just whoever was registered on the rolls at one time or another. So let me just mention this and then ask you about your concerns about Pennsylvania, because I could have voted by mail-in ballot for the primary, but I chose to go physically, and I'll go physically unless there's someone standing there with a crew-served weapon trying to stop me, and then I'll find a grenade and I'll go around him. But in Newark, New Jersey, right across the river from you, just a little further north, they had their primary in May, and the leftist-leaning city officials and voting officials there, the voting officials went through the ballots, all mail-in primary. They determined, left-leaning people, 20% of all ballots that came in were fraudulent. That's in Newark. If they found 20%, I can only imagine it was probably about 42 or 45% if that was a true figure. Do you have concerns? Is it a concern at all about this mail-in ballot procedure in Pennsylvania? Will you think it'll affect the outcome in any way?
My concern with that is that there is very little information, and I actually did a live last night. If anybody wants to watch it, please do. I pretty much cover everything about this election as we know right now. So there's very little information, and there's a lot of conflicting information. So last election for the primary, my husband and I did register for a mail-in ballot. We did not receive one until probably like 5 days before the election. Not that I was going to mail it anyway. What we ended up doing is dropping it off into the mail, into the ballot box. It took them 6 weeks to count our primary election. The reason being is that Delaware County chose to count, instead of running them through the machines, they were counting by hand. So they had volunteers sitting and literally going through signatures and comparing them to the ballots, which I can only imagine how painstaking that was. They found a lot of inconsistencies. They were signatures, but no ballots, ballots, but no signature. It was a mess. It was I think 8.2% of the ballots were thrown out because of inaccuracies. The other thing is the instructions are yay big. And people didn't realize they have to bubble the entire, like you do an SAT test, you have to bubble so they would just write a check mark. That got thrown out. So there was a lot of inconsistencies. So that's what I'm afraid of too. I have people who are registered Republican and have been all their life receive Democratic mail-in ballots. So the way I explained it yesterday, and I'll just do it real fast. If you do receive a mail-in ballot and you've never requested one, let the boards of elections know. Tell them, take that entire packet, take it to your polling place. Make sure you check where the polling place is because they've been consolidated and the places have changed. Make sure, double check on your registration. You can actually do that by each state. You can see your registration, where you're registered, how you're registered, your address, your name, and everything on it. Make corrections if you need to, but you can bring that entire packet in. You surrender it to the whoever's working the polls. They destroy it, and then you can go and vote in person, regular way. If you started already to fill it out, or you applied for it and never received it, then you have to vote provisional. So, but some people felt like mailing them in with the whole post office debacle going on. I would not feel safe. I would feel safer to just drive one over to the boards of commissions, their building, or drop it off into the ballot box myself the day of. So.
Yeah, no, for me, Dasha, it probably resonates with you, having lived in the Soviet Union as a kid. Certainly with your parents, I'm sure it would resonate. But for me, the act of going to the polling station, even if I have to wait in line, is very important to me. It's a seminally important moment. And I wouldn't say I was denied, but I didn't have the opportunity to do that for 30 years because I hadn't lived in Ohio since I came back in the Army. And so the last time I was at a polling station voting was 1988 for George Bush.
Wow.
Yeah. So every vote since then, and I vote every year, has been by federal absentee ballot because I was either overseas 23 of those 30 years and then or back here in the States, but elsewhere. So for me, going is such a big deal, and that's why I'm thinking about it. Dasha, I don't know if you can stay a bit longer or do you have to rush off before you answer?
No,
okay.
I'm good.
Okay. No, I was going to say, because I would say that, well, maybe you've got a lot of work to do, but I mean, Tom Wolfe has ensured the destruction of your family business, so you probably, unfortunately, don't have any work to do there. but you,
right.
But we don't mean to laugh about that, but I mean, what else can you do about this idiocy? But I would say that you probably have a lot of work to do for the campaign, but since it's kind of you to give us a little bit more time, but let me remind folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa here on the Indaba Africa channel on YouTube. I'm Chris in Central Pennsylvania, retired U.S. Army Colonel, 36 and a half years service, 23 of those overseas, 34 of those active duty, and served in Germany 3 times, Italy once, Tunisia, Liberia, Malawi, Botswana. Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Nigeria, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. It's a lot to say.
Wow.
Gulf War, Operation Enduring Freedom, all these different things. Bosnia, list goes on and on. I'm not boasting. I'm just saying that I didn't just fall off the back of the turnip truck. I've been doing this for a bit. So anyway, we've got a guest today. She is the candidate for the Republican Party for Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District, which is located on the south side of Philadelphia, on the southeastern corner here of Pennsylvania. And my guest is Dasha Pruett. She's a Russian immigrant, naturalized U.S. citizen. And she's one of the team here. I was born here, so that's how I got my citizenship. She came here. She had to work for it. She earned it. She got it, and she's a proud American running for office. So, Dasha, with that, let's talk about some of your positions, which we hadn't had a chance to get to yet. Second Amendment.
My gosh.
Let's take away the guns, right? Because guns kill people.
Yeah. So far lately, I've seen fireworks being used as a weapon. Cars being used as a weapon, knives have been used as a weapon. Listen, if you can get creative, you could probably make a toothpick a weapon. You know, anything can be used as a weapon. I believe in the Constitution. I believe into the freedom of to carry. I am disturbed at the laws that I actually had to do a survey yesterday And I'm getting an endorsement from the Gun Owners Association. They're coming out with one in a day or so. Unfortunately, I dragged my feet, and the way I look at guns, I did not want to own one until I knew how to use it, because with my luck, I would have probably blown off a toe. But I wanted to know how to load it, unload it, clean it. It's like buying an 18-wheeler and not knowing how to drive it. Yeah. That's how I looked at it. So I dragged my feet, and then the pandemic hit, and then everything was shut down. In order for me to get a concealed carry, my husband called, I think, in June to our courthouse so I can submit an application. I don't have that appointment until mid-November. So that's how, and all of our gun shops they don't have any weapons because they're selling out like hotcakes. Yeah. People, seeing what's going on and the craziness that's happening, and now the defunding of the police departments, which means trying to get rid of them. How are you going to protect yourself? What are you going to do? And when we had the riots in Philadelphia, we had an ATM a block from our house that somebody put a couple of sticks of dynamite into. It's starting to get very close to home. I mean, when you see the McCluskey video in St. Louis, people want to feel safe. You want to protect your family. You want to protect your house, and everybody in it. You want to protect your business. I think, it's our constitutional rights in order to have firearms. Again, the problem with with everything that's going on is lack of mental health support. It's not the guns that kill people. It's the lack of people who either did not receive proper mental health, or like with, I think it was the Sandy Hook shooting, where the mother was trying to report her son multiple times and it failed. So the problem is more mental health than the guns. I mean, even in UK, where people there's no gun laws. People were using machetes and cars. Again, anything can be used as a weapon. So we have to protect our Second Amendment.
Yeah, it's your last line of defense. When people are defunding the police, they're telling you don't need guns because the police are there. Only the government should have guns. Now they're defunding the government. So, I mean, it's just insane. I got a couple of super chats I got to deal with here very quickly. Let me do those very quickly. So Brett Sessoms, the guy that's in Mississippi, said, hey, good luck, Dasha. I hope you win. That was nice of him. Thank you. And he said, now I got to frame this because his question I don't think is entirely fair, but let me frame it. So he says, how would Dasha handle North Korea crisis? Well, she's not running for president of the United States, so we should probably put it in this frame. If you were elected to Congress, would you have an interest in what's happening in North Korea, and would you try to get on a committee of foreign relations or something like that, or how would you address it? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, because it hits home to me. What's happening, even though North Korea was even worse than what's happening in communist Russia, but I can relate to what's going on, and it's a hot topic, and frankly, I'm very pleased with the way the president's handling it. He frankly, right now there's all this confusion whether the leader is still in a coma or not in a coma, or what's going on. So they have their own thing going on. We have, oh gosh. So, and I think from what I hear, his sister is a little worse. So that's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. But yes, we have to have some kind of, we don't need to go there. We don't need, occupy anything there, but we need to be able to keep an eye on them and make sure that if we get into talks with them, if we can create some kind of either a peace agreement with them, or not send an airplane with cash in the middle of the night, but, somehow work something out with them, because it's in the best interest for our country and for surrounding allies too.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw this one out. Brett asked this question a while ago, but I think it's a fair question. I think I know the answer, and I think one of the viewers also thinks they know the answer. Who is your all-time favorite U.S. president?
Trump, actually. Reagan.
Okay, Reagan. Okay, yeah, that's what someone said was Reagan.
It was Reagan was my favorite because I just thought he was everything that he did with the Russian relations, you know, with the talks and with Germany taking down the wall. I actually have a piece of the Berlin Wall somewhere around here.
Me too.
You know, he's just I like the way he governed. He had a great sense of humor, but I like that Trump kind of maybe not as eloquent, but he tries to do things very in a similar fashion.
Okay.
Maybe similar but different.
Now, there are some other nice comments. Let me give you some compliments here real quick, Dasha, because there's some nice ones coming in.
Thank you.
Someone said, well, it's from the viewers. Someone said that for a politician, she's got her head screwed on straight. Well, I'd have to say that's probably because she's not a politician. She's running for office for the first time. That might be why she got her head screwed on straight. And it says, weird listening to a politician who makes sense, is Tian. But again, she's not a politician. Maybe that's why she makes sense. And then
thank you.
Lots of people saying what a great guest. Thank you guys for that. Appreciate it. Yeah. So now let me ask this question. This is on your platform, which you're running in, the issue of immigration. Having been an asylum seeker, I believe that's how you came to America, was as an asylum seeker, with a legitimate asylum case, not some trumped up economic migration. Oh, I've been oppressed. Let me have asylum. So your family were legal asylum immigrants from Soviet Russia, Soviet communism in the Soviet Union. What are your thoughts about immigration, legal and otherwise, in America?
So I have a little bit of a different view on different. I think, first of all, I think our borders have to be protected. You know, it's like having a no door on your house. Like, come on in, everybody. It doesn't work that way. And frankly, our immigration laws are easier than in some other countries. So, you know, the problem has been we have laws. They just haven't been used. They haven't been followed. And, you know, just like if I am standing in a supermarket and somebody bumps in front of me in front of the line, I will be annoyed. I don't like when people are, you know, asylum seekers is a different thing, because when you're running away for your life, literally, and when we left Russia, we left all the contents behind. Our apartment looked the same way as the day before we left everything. You weren't allowed to take anything. So when I say we were running for our life, we were running for our life. My father is my stepdad, but he's my dad. He raised me since I was 3. So anybody who wipes your snotty nose and deals with your teenage BS is your parent, So my dad is Jewish, and in Russia, you weren't allowed to, the only religion you had was communism. So we did have one synagogue in Moscow, and we would go on high holidays on occasion. But it was we came as Jewish dissidents, even though I'm practicing Catholic. But I spent the first 4 years of my life in an Orthodox. When I say Orthodox, it's Orthodox Lubavitch's Jewish school. I'm more Jewish than my Jewish friends. I know how to keep kosher if I need to. And I'm actually very blessed that I had an experience of, experiencing Judaism and Christianity. So I feel very blessed. But we have laws on the books, and we have to start following them. Jumping, across the border is not the right way to do this. There's a right way and a wrong way. And if you are being persecuted, you should be able to file asylum. We were vetted before we left Russia. We were vetted for 2 years. And then we were vetted for another 6 months before we could step foot into America. They checked everything on us, and that's how it should be. We can't jeopardize safety and security of our own citizens for illegal immigrants. That's my feeling. My feeling on DACA is if you have a child who was brought in as a child, and when I say child, I don't mean 17 years old. That's not a child in my eyes at this point. It's an adult. If you were brought as a young child and then that's all and you served in the military, or you are a police officer, or you're doing some kind of line of duty job, I think you should have a path to citizenship, but it has to be the same way as all the immigrants do it. You know, you apply for a green card, you know, and then you go through the entire process of becoming a citizen. Maybe it gets shortened for them because they already lived here. Maybe they already get a green card and they're kind of partially there. That's, you know, a possibility. But I think they should be able to have, if they earned it, they should be able to become citizens. So those are my views.
Excellent. There's a really good question here. Let me get this before we get close to wrapping up. It's from Topsy Kretz. And Topsy Kretz says, well, she's saying you're a congresswoman. I guess that congratulations, you already got elected.
Thank you.
No, she's candidate for Congress in the 5th District of Pennsylvania. But going to have a problem in your district, though, because now I guess someone's done their homework and looked up your campaign site, you support defunding Planned Parenthood, which is a group many constituents in your district support. Is that an issue that's come up? And is in fact that your position, defunding Planned Parenthood?
I think the government should not, it's not defunding the Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood makes, they reckon over, I want to say $500 million with a B, $500 million. They get probably huge chunk of that is government money. The other portion of it is private donors. Then they also have, it's a paid, what people don't understand, you don't get, it's not a free place to go. It's not a free clinic. If you go there, you still have to pay. It's a paid service. Okay. And majority of the things they do, it's not women's health care, it's abortions. Yeah. So I believe in life. I believe that life through conceptual to birth. Right. It's human lives are very precious. There are people, I said on 3 different adoption boards, people will cut off their arm in order to become a parent. There are people who would want will take that child, even if they have disabilities. I think we need more money to put into pregnancy treatment or pregnancy crisis treatment centers where pregnant women get more support about what to do, how to help them find a home if they need it, how to get them, to the next process if they want to adopt their child because they feel they can't raise him or her, or give them an opportunity to have that chance, educate them, do anything possible. I think human life is so precious. I mean, think about it. Here we are saving endangered caterpillars, but yet human baby's life is not important. We're spending gajillions of dollars sending, those little robots on Mars to look for life, but yet we're destroying life on our own planet. So human life, the most precious gift. So that's my view on it. It's not about defunding. It's about government not funding the Planned Parenthood. Well, they can raise the money their way.
I was going to say, and I think part of that is the money, whether it's a microscopic portion of a cent, but every American who pays taxes to the federal government is forced by default to be funding something that many have religious tenets against. Right. And I think that's not a fair use of our resources. But I was going to get close to ending it, but there is a super chat from Brett, and let me frame this so it's fair to you because I don't know if it's a fair question. It's not a bad one. Hang in there, Dasha. Don't worry. It's not a bad one. It's not a got you, but he's asking about Lana Marks. Lana Marks is a personal friend of Donald Trump, and he appointed her to be the ambassador to South Africa. She's in South Africa, but she's very disconnected from reality, according to a lot of South Africans, and I would have to echo that. But Brett's question was, if you're elected, would you be willing to do research on her? You probably would.
Absolutely.
There you go.
I'm going to do research when we get off this call.
Okay. And after research, would you be willing to introduce a motion recalling her? I think before you answer that question, it would depend on what she learned about Lana Marks and how it fits into things. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, as soon as we get off this, I'm going to go do a little research on her because I don't know much about her. Yeah. It was never a question that was presented to me, but thank you for pointing that out. Now it is.
Now the irony for you, Dasha, is there wasn't a question from a South African viewer. It was a question from an American viewer asking about South Africa. So that's kind of funny. Listen, Dasha, you have a fascinating backstory, or as comic book fans would say, you have quite an interesting origin story. So, I mean, the whole history, everything, your positions are quite interesting. So, before we wrap up, I'd like to give you a chance, if there's anything I've overlooked or some topic you'd like to raise very quickly, give you a chance to bring that up right now. And also, I'd like to extend an open invitation to you to come back on the channel before the election, if you'd like, to do this again.
I would love to.
Okay, so
yes, I would love to.
So we'll do that again. Okay, but any topic you'd like to bring up that I may have neglected?
You know what? I think my topic is we need to start putting America first, and I know it's a very Donald Trump thing, but we have to start putting our communities and the people in our communities first. We have Mary Gay Scanlon's running. We have in Berks County, we have a detention center for illegal immigrants. She spends more time there worried about whether they have food, air conditioning, and COVID testing, but yet people in Chester or Marcus Hook, or even in Broomall, you don't have to go far. There are people who can't afford food, who cannot, their children, now that the schools are shut down, they have no way of teaching them because they don't have internet or they don't have laptops for them to use. So before running there, we need to start focusing on our people. We need to bring jobs back into our communities. And there's plenty of things that we could be doing. Housing. We need to start providing, there's ways we can start doing things. We have a program here for housing, to build housing, but they don't build them. They don't fix them. They just collect furniture and whatever else they want to collect. So there's so many things that are done ineffectively that have to be, I think, need to be fixed. And we can fix them if we are willing to do the work and think outside the box and not give empty promises, but actually to do them. And there are people who are willing to help, hence my 150 volunteers that we gathered in the last 2 months. So, people want to help and they want to see change. They just need guidance, direction, and they need leadership. And this is something we've been lacking in. So that's, my 2 cents on that.
Well, I think that's 2 good cents. It goes a lot further than 2 cents, to be honest. That was a very good point. Well, Dasha, I want to thank you very much for being my first congressional candidate to appear on the channel. We'll have more coming up, but it was really interesting to hear your backstory, your positions. We didn't cover all of them, but we got a chance to cover it. I think the audience got a good chance to learn a little bit about you, actually a lot about you, I think, and I found you interesting. So I want to thank you. Any parting thoughts?
You know what, if they want to, if they can contact, they can go on my website. It's dashaforcongress.com. Check us out on Facebook, or I finally started tweeting. I wasn't doing that for a while. I was told to, I had to. So on Twitter, it's Dasha for Congress. So if you have any questions, reach out. I love talking to everyday people and answer any concerns or questions or suggestions, because again, we're fighting for this together.
Brilliant. Dasha, I'm going to put you in the waiting room. I don't know if you can wait around for a few minutes, and I'll get back with you in the Zoom if you can stay there.
Sure.
So we can chat and cover some stuff after this, but I'm going to close out the show. So I'm going to put Dasha in the waiting room. Dasha, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was fantastic. All right, she's up. There we go. Okay. Well, now I got to fix the screen, folks. Hang on. This is what happens when I readjust this. So give me a moment here. Zoom windows. I just got to fix this. I know it's really creepy looking there. There we go. Turn this one off and turn that one off. Oops, that's not the right one. Okay, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this stream. This has been a fascinating stream. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. I hope that you've learned something about Dasha Pruett, who is a candidate for Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District, Republican, a conservative Republican, running for Congress, U.S. Congress. She, by the way, is one of at least 221 Republican women who've been running for Congress this year. That's already a record, and it's likely to be even higher after all of it's sorted out, because some of the states were a bit late. But over 200 Republican women running for Congress, setting a record. In the last election cycle in 2018, a record number of Democratic candidates ran as women in the Democratic election. This time around, for the Democrats, this time around, a record number of Republican women who are just fed up with a lot of the nonsense the misrepresentation of America and all that's been happening. And so Dasha stood up, not a career politician, but a small business owner and a Russian immigrant, a legal immigrant who came here under asylum. Boy, checking all those blocks, right? People talk about asylum and how the U.S. is unkind to asylum seekers. That's utter nonsense. There's some proof in the pudding right there. Her family came here as asylum seekers, legal asylum seekers, and got asylum. And she grew up here after that, after having lived in Soviet Russia. Folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. I will do a Night Owls edition of Stray Voltage later this afternoon, 3:35 Eastern Standard Time. That would be 9:35 in Botswana, South Africa, 8:35 in Windhoek, Abuja, and London. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your comments and questions. Thanks for the super chats, Brett. I can say Brett because that was the only place they came from, so it's easy to solve. Thank you for the super chats. Really do appreciate it. I hope that you found the videos I did earlier today interesting. The stream, the recap of the Republican National Convention, as well as the little thing about the social media phenomenon happening in South Africa. Anyway, folks, we'll see you back on the channel in about an hour and 40 minutes. Wow, I'll have to get something to eat. In the meantime, thanks a lot. Take care. God bless. I'm just going to close out without putting up the the video. I'm just going to put the screen up here. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll catch you guys a little bit later on. God bless. Thank you so much. As Big Daddy Liberty says, never trust a commie, and as I say, don't trust a cadre. In this case, don't trust a leftist. All right, folks. Thanks a lot for your participation. Whoops, that's not there. Here we go. Here we go. Nope, what's going on? Oh, I'm clicking the wrong one. That's why. Sorry about that. Epic fail there. Now it'll come up. What's going on there? All right, here it is. There we go. That's what I wanted to end with. Sorry about that, folks. There we go. Now we got it straight.